Yeah, so all these multi-level, we can see how this false complaint was blatantly accepted by the state police, illegal, fabricated, beyond jurisdiction, and the last being, like we said, lying to the court that Swamiji has been arrested while he was not. And it went on. Then he was illegally arrested and taken into custody. And here you can see something that you would have never heard of, where this is the live telecast of Swamiji's so called interrogation by the state police. And you can see here whatever Swamiji is talking to the police, obviously that's not, they shouldn't be showing that whatever he's speaking, because it's an investigation, so to speak. But if you see the headlines, the subtitles, it will show as if this is what Swamiji is talking, which there's no way that the media channel could have gotten hold of. So again, a bunch of whole defamatory lies. And Swamiji, as we said, was in illegal custody for almost 2 months, 53 days. And towards the hearing of the final hearing of his bail application in the false case, literally the state police gives a memo, which you can see here, to the court saying that they have interrogated 48 witnesses. And quote, they say they have not been able to make out any offense by Swamiji. It does not disclose the commission of any crime by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. And yet they do not stop at that. They actually publish ads in the newspapers, as you can see here. It's a very demeaning statement. The headline reads, "Paisa feko tamasha dekho." Throw money and watch the fun is the literal translation of it. And there you see none less than the top police official of the state, the DIG of the CID, actually calling on people to come and register some crime against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, and not only giving this incentive, but also giving monetary incentive, saying that you will be given travel expenses for coming and registering your so-called crime.
And
And
who was going to be paying for those travel expenses? I'm sure he was not going to be paying with his, from his own pocket. So
yeah, so it would have been again the Hindu Mesic deep state elements of who wanted to eliminate Swamiji. And in spite of this, no victim came forward. That is yet another testament to who Swamiji is. Otherwise, anybody, at least for the lure of money, would have come forward. And then, because Swamiji was still unbroken, untouched by any of this lawfare persecution, the next they attacked the organization, the mission, the disciples, and their very subsistence. Here you can see here a shocking, illegal freezing of the bank accounts of the public charitable trusts, which were inspired by Swamiji. As per Indian law itself, the trust has no connection with in our case, there was no connection with Swamiji, but yet the police ordered for the illegal bank freeze, and the banks happily obeyed that, and just overnight they froze all the bank accounts. So leaving the residents, the ashramites, the sannyasis, left with no access to any money for whatever reason, be it continuation of the social services, the temple activities, which till date have been unbroken thanks to the grace and blessings of Paramashiva. In spite of all this persecution, we have not had a single day when the temple rituals were broken or affected. So, for the temple services, for their own subsistence, for their food, for their clothes, for conducting of the charitable activities like Annadan, and for anything to be able to defend themselves and Swamiji from this horrendous illegal attack, basically cut off the whole lifeline, the oxygen. And then it took a few more than a month to get the accounts defrozen, and you can see here the order saying the same. And this one should note that it is not that this case was argued on merits and then the case was dismissed against the bank, but very strangely, the state itself came forward to the court and said, we want to withdraw our order seeking the freezing of the bank accounts. And hence, the petition came to be closed and the accounts came to be defrozen. You had a number of murder attempts on the disciples. And now we saw how the whole, the big machinery about the media, the state, the deep state forces in the state attacking. And now, if we boil it down to the individuals who were the conspirators, we can get an even more idea how this persecution is conducted, how the science of genocide is executed.
So I'm seeing this slide on weapons of attack. Lenin.
Yes.
I'm not able to hear you. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. So the next few slides give a little bit of more detail on some of these co-conspirators or weapons of attack. One is Lenin, which we'd already mentioned that he was the one behind the FIR that originated in the state of Tamil Nadu, which was not even the jurisdiction which Swamiji was living in. And it did not have any crime. There was no prima facie case made out in his allegations, but somehow the police added penal codes which were not even part of the allegations, and this case was transferred to Karnataka. And Lenin himself, to escape from his previous scams, he had entered into the ashram as, under the guise of a seeker. He was caught red-handed stealing and cheating, and to the tune of 1 crore, and he was actually fired from the ashram at one point. An investigation also revealed that he had misbehaved with many of the female monastic members of the ashram, and desperate to save himself and seeking revenge, he filed this FIR, and he was one of the main people behind this whole conspiracy. But Lenin himself, because of the crimes he did himself, there's 4 non-bailable warrants against him. He is charged with rape, extortion, conspiracy, and criminal intimidation. And Lenin was arrested in 2012 after his bail was denied.
And this happened in Chennai? Sorry, another question. So was he arrested in Chennai? You're on mute.
Actually, this man was arrested in multiple places. He was arrested in Chennai, he was arrested in Karnataka, because he had committed multiple crimes across the various states. In fact, actually, he had warrants against him in the state of Uttar Pradesh in Varanasi, and he went absconding actually multiple times. Even currently, as we speak, he's actually absconding. He's evaded the law, and he has 4 non-bailable warrants against him for the crimes done against women, including rape. and he's the state is the police is in search of him, and the court is has emphasized that he has to be brought to book. So yeah.
So I think you skipped a slide. There was a slide with a lady. Yes, this one.
Yes, actually, this is the case in which Lenin is absconding. So the victim in this whole conspiracy, who has had to pay a very heavy price for no fault of hers, is this very person by the name Ranjita, who is also known as Nithyananda, who is an initiated sannyasi of Swamiji. And she, like the thousands of us, came to serve Kailasa and revive Hinduism. And she was the target of the attack by these Hindu music forces as they fabricated that deepfake video using her image. And looking back, it's so common sense. Swamiji is a public figure. She was an actress who has acted in a huge number of films. So there is so much of public footage available of her, and the composite video layering, or creating images by superimposing one over the other, becomes so so damn easy, given that you have enough amount of video footage of both the people who have been framed in the deepfake video.
So just to get some clarity, so Ranjita, you mentioned that she was a movie actress. So did she end her career in movies before she started following Swamiji?
At that time, I believe she was already transitioning as a director. So she was still in the industry and also a follower of Swamiji.
Got it.
Got it.
And this next slide actually details some of the recent victories of Kailasa in this whole saga that's been happening for over 10 years, where the Lenin, who we featured earlier, and then Mr. Sridhar, who's a co-conspirator, he was a lawyer, both for their crimes have been either arrested or they're absconding. And this is as of, I think even this slide might be outdated, but this past March 2024. So finally seeing a little bit of justice coming through with the court cognizing and the police actually, taking action against these co-conspirators. Yes, and Lenin was charged with rape, extortion, and conspiracy against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. There was arrest in 2012, and he's currently absconding now. We are in 2024. And he was one of the main people behind the extortion attempt. Before the video was released, there was multiple extortion attempts to get money and to say basically, if you don't pay now, we're going to release this video. We're going to file false cases. All of this happened in the days right before the video was released, and he was behind the creating of the deep video. And it's important to mention, you had asked earlier, who is, behind it. There's maybe not one particular person or institution, but these anti-Hindu, Hinduismic forces we've described. But it's important to note that this all started in the state of Tamil Nadu, which in most viewers may be aware, but many may not be aware, is an atheist is a state run by an atheist political party, the DMK, which has a strong anti-Hindu policy. And the Sun TV, which is the one that actually released this deepfake video initially, they are closely connected to the DMK party and their leadership. So there's a lot of dots, if when you connect the dots to point, who was funneling this, how are these people being supported to be able to do what they did on such a wide scale and still able to do it till today. And another weapon of this attack was this Aarti Rao. She is an NRI. She's also a US citizen. And she came forward very, very late in the game. This was, I think, August 2010, when the case in India was actually supposed to be dismissed. The judge told the prosecution, the police, you don't have anything, we're going to dismiss it. On the eve of that dismissal is when the Indian police produced Miss Rao's statement. And she actually came to Swamiji back in 2004 for healing of her 4 STDs, which are incurable STDs, and which actually became very important in the evidences, which we'll see in a few slides. So, as I mentioned earlier in the interview, the same allegations that were filed in the India case were actually also filed in India. Miss Rao attempted to file her claims with the Ann Arbor police. Sorry, the slides are just a little slow. Attempted to file her claims with the Ann Arbor police, and they would not even open a case. She attempted to file affidavits attaching the same copy-paste claims to those affidavits, which are sworn affidavits under perjury, saying that she was raped exactly as the India case. So these same allegations were heard in Ohio, the state of Ohio, the state of California, the state of Washington, and the state of Michigan. And at various levels, we were talking about the Michigan police, which was her home state where she was living at the time, or we're talking about the FBI. She even tried to bring her claims to the FBI. And all of these levels of law enforcement and all of these courts, whether it's a local court in the state of Michigan or a federal court in Ohio, or her own bankruptcy, she was either completely, her cases were dismissed. She was fined over $500,000. There are literally 2 bench warrants against her right now. And what we're looking at here is the $500,000 order from the federal court in Ohio, which is basically penalized her for trying to defame the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and his U.S. orgs and U.S. following. And in Michigan, she tried to bring her claims to the Ann Arbor police, which is the city. Ann Arbor was the city she was living in. And they simply did not open a case. Whereas you see the contrast, the same allegations, same person. In India, this case is going on we're pushing close to 15 years. But in the US and the Michigan, they didn't even register a case. Not because they didn't look into it, not because they didn't see the same allegations, because there was just no truth and basis to it to even register a case. And this is an email from the detective that was assigned to the matter when she came in, and he said there's absolutely no case, no pending case, nothing is open, when we had done some inquiries on if there is anything. And because of some of the litigation that was happening in California against Ms. Rao for her misappropriation of trade secrets, her defamation, excuse me, she tried to file for bankruptcy in the state of Michigan, which is nothing but a tactic to try to stay the California cases so she can say I'm bankrupt. And the US courts do allow for this, that the cases get stayed. But in her own bankruptcy, she actually has to come for her own creditor's exam or deposition, which she refused to do. So she, on the basis of, she said that she is afraid for her life because she was this so-called victim in the India case. So the federal bankruptcy court said, okay, fine. If you're afraid for your life, we'll give you protection. The bailiff from the court will escort you. She didn't show up. And so her own bankruptcy she filed was dismissed. And similarly, she had made these same claims to the FBI in California. They didn't open a case and even register her claims. And she tried to make these same claims in the state of Washington. And the state of Washington, she was due to come for her deposition. Sorry, state of Michigan. And the state of Michigan, she was supposed to come for her own deposition. And she said, again, she's afraid for her life. She can't come. She gave all the excuses. She even, then the court said, okay, you do a video deposition. Wherever you are in the world, you come and do a video deposition. She did not even come for the video deposition. So at that point, the court issued 2 bench warrants against Aarti Rao for her arrest. These were issued by the state court in Michigan.
So, what do you think was her incentive behind framing Swamiji? Looks like she didn't leave any stone unturned to ensure that Swamiji is defamed, and I'm trying to understand what was the incentive.
See, surely there was some financial incentive to keep this alive. It is not easy to fight any case and be involved in so much litigation. It's expensive. And that was actually one of the tactics that they were using against Swamiji in the US to try to drain the resources, put all your resources in fighting litigation so you can't run the nonprofits. So there was, it's expensive, and surely she was backed by these anti-Hindu elements that were supporting her. And so, I mean, and she was behind the extortion as well. So it was not like an unknown thing. They were trying to get money from the beginning. And she even, in 2009, actually hinted of sort of an attack that could happen. And she gave prelude to that right before the whole persecution started. So it was like a threat, and she made do on the threat in her role of coming and being a false victim. Maybe Achala, Swami, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, we'll be explaining further the extent to which the Hindu Misi conspirators actually tried to protect her, in spite of some of the shocking revelations that came about her character. The extent to which money was pumped in, media was roped in, we'll just see in a few slides, and then we can understand she was just used as a front, but behind there were many forces that were out to not let Swamiji off this false case.
Yes. And this next slide is basically another contempt order by the court in the US against Aarti Rao for her failure to show up at her depositions. See, the thing is, she attempted to make the same claims and try the same strategy in the US. The difference is, first of all, her claims in India are not even under oath. She did it under an anonymous name. But in the US, if she is caught lying, it is perjury. It is a crime. It can be a federal crime, and she would have to face that. So that is why she's not ready to actually be tested, her claims be tested by another lawyer in front of the eyes of the court, because she'll be completely exposed. So that's why she never came to a single deposition, even if it was video, even if she had protection, she did not show. So the U.S. court basically takes that into consideration, and is how they decide on the course of the proceedings, which the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was successful in all of these cases. I'm not sure which slide you're seeing. Okay. Yes. And this was another civil case in the state of California. So we'd previously seen in Ohio and Michigan, now in California. Again, she was supposed to come for her deposition. She had a lawyer, but finally she didn't come, and the court dismissed her claims and awarded over, I believe, $25,000 in this case. So she was ordered to pay a penalty of $25,000, $25,610 US dollars, for failure to follow the court orders, including her mandatory appearance at her deposition. And even in this Washington court case, which was basically the criminal prosecution of Mr. Vinay Bharadwaj, who was a co-conspirator in this whole persecution and malicious prosecution that was happening against the SPH. And he had molested and sexually assaulted a minor child in Seattle, Washington, where he was also a volunteer at the Seattle Temple. And during that time, he had molested and abused this child, and she opened up to her parents, and her parents wanted to take action. And because of that, and to put pressure on them, he started making the allegations that he was a victim of the Supreme Pontiff. So like this, he tried to concoct this defense, this fake defense. But to do that, he brought in Miss Arti Rao to give her supporting claims, which were the same claims she said in India, the same claims she said in Michigan. And again, the court just completely dismissed it as false evidence. And this Vinay Bharadwaj was actually sentenced to 4.75 years of jail. He served in a maximum prison for almost 5 years before he was deported back to India. So he was literally kicked out of the US for the crimes he did against this child.
I'm really speechless because I'm just not able to gather. So I'm just getting some echo. I'm just able to hear myself back. So yeah, I think it's better now. I just this is one area where I think that there should not be any forgiveness, when it comes to abusing small children. And I do not know how human beings can stoop down to this level, but each one of them looks like who have attacked Swamiji in their own personal life, or their their view of the universe. There's not been any morality, there's not been any integrity, and their own personal lives have been so shady. It's it just I've lost my words after hearing all this. So when Swamiji was going through all these things, were there any disciples who left him, who started suspecting him? Because it looks like this was so overwhelming. And it must have been very hard when you don't have all these evidences to counter them. These evidences would have trickled in slowly and steadily, and that is when it was the cases went to the courts in the United States. So how did the disciples support Swamiji in the midst of all these trials?
So many stood and just knew all of this was absolutely fake, false allegations, completely baseless, and they know their experiences with Swamiji are true and what he's done for their lives as individuals, whether it's the healing, the ability to, achieve whatever they wanted in life, a showering of wealth, health, relationships, so many blessings people had and have experienced. But of course, the weight and depth of this attack was so huge. It was meant to destroy the mission, which means the mission is Swamiji and the Sangha, the community. So obviously, this disinformation did influence some people. It did make them, be confused because they had their experience, they had their truth, but then they're seeing so many lies and so many false narratives being portrayed again and again and again as this, which is a tool of genocide. What makes the lie into a truth by basically, just drilling it into people through the media, which many so the media attack was successful in that way. And that, some people did leave at this time. Many came back, after the dust settled and they understood that this is not what it was portrayed to be. But of course, it was quite a shock for many people to go through it. But like I said, it was only because we weren't uh, experienced with such an attack. We had heard about things, but as a community, it's not something we had gone through. And we don't wish any community to go through it. But yes, it had taken its toll. But those who stood were able to stand on the teachings, and they're much more stronger spiritually and even more connected because they were able to go through the full cycle of this persecution.
That's very encouraging to
That's
hear.
very encouraging to hear. Yes. I- If maybe the next slide you're able to, it seems stuck for me.
I'm not sure why, but it is not broadcast the screen.
Maybe we can refresh it or something. See, at that time also, we didn't know. Like I said, it's, you look back and you're able to put a PowerPoint and piece it together, but at that time you're just responding, and we're in different countries. We're not with Swamiji, so a lot of confusion they tried to create. And at that time, we don't even know this concept of human rights. That there's things like the United Nations and ways to, you know, take action if you're being persecuted or attacked, minority. There's so many avenues out there. So it was much more knowledgeable now, and it's really, it had its effect, but it opened up a lot of doors in what why Hinduism needs protection, why Hinduism needs to have a Hindu state, which is uh, one of the reasons why Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was actually attacked. Was what he was doing was not just creating temples and these Hindu ecosystems and monasteries across the world. These were all building blocks for this Hindu nation, um, basically creating all the avenues and all of the pillars of a Hindu nation, and doing it from the ground up over almost now 40 years. Now it's in fruition is the United States of Kailas. But you can see it's not a small thing that Swamiji was doing and what was in the works, and why these anti-Hindu forces were so pinpointed on Swamiji's, because what he was doing for Hindus and Hinduism across the world.
So,
So
while they are trying to
while they are
put
trying
out
to
the
put out
slides,
the
can you tell us
slides,
something
can
about
you tell us
Kailas?
something about Kailas?
Yes. So, one second. So, Kailasa is the formal name of the nation is the United States of Kailasa. It is the only and first nation for Hindus. If you think about Hinduism, we know that there's Hindus across the world, the Hindu diaspora. We have many Hindus in India, but there's not one state that runs on a Hindu constitution. But if you look in ancient times, we had 56 Hindu nations spanning all the way from Afghanistan to Indonesia, Malaysia, and they were producing almost 40% of the world's GDP. Hindu kingdoms were literally running the planet, so to speak, and there was the science of enlightenment was thriving in those times. But as we know, what also happened was the colonialism, genocide, attack on these Hindu civilizations, which basically almost destroyed authentic Hinduism, where even in countries like India, it's a secular constitution. Hindus are fighting for their rights. Hindu temples are run by the state. So we don't have a single place where Hindus can call their own, Hindus can call their home, and we feel safe that they can do all the authentic Hindu practices and services uh, without fear of persecution. And another aspect of this is it is the only ancient civilization that's actually still alive today. There are other great civilizations that existed, but they're completely gone, whether it's the Mayan civilization, the Egyptian civilization. They were great civilizations, but they don't exist anymore. But if you look at the Hindu diaspora, wherever they've settled, whether it's the US, Canada, UK, Latin America, Europe, Africa, across Southeast Asia, they may be they are the minority in almost all of those countries, but they are some of the highest income earners, some of the most highly educated. They have least rates of, this is what I'm saying is from the scientific studies. Their kids have some of the least rates of being in gangs. They have some of the lowest rates of depression. It is because of the Hindu teachings which emphasize family, which emphasize inner peace, outer peace, which are passed down generation to generation, guru to disciple, and which is why Hindus, while they may be a minority, they are contributing and peacefully coexisting wherever they've settled across the world. But even in those places, if we don't have a Hindu state which has the political legitimacy, which is able to be a voice for Hindus, like the SPH is a voice for Hindus, then Hinduism as we know it will be extinct. In the sense that Sanatana Hindu Dharma never goes away, but will you and I be able to practice it the way we want to practice it, the way it's meant to practice? So that is the effort that's happening now with the United States of Kailasa or Kailasa. It's establishing the political legitimacy of Hinduism by establishing diplomatic relations at all levels of government, whether it's national, state, provincial, city, and making those inroads with many leaders across the world who really, they may have heard of Hinduism, they may know something about it, but they really aren't exposed to it. So they have a lot of questions. So being ambassadors for Hinduism and really showing to the world how Hinduism has answers to all of the world's problems, whether it's COVID, whether it's suicide, whether it's depression, whether it's um, starvation, poverty, all of the solutions are encapsulated in our Hindu scriptures. So I think we got the slides going again. Do you
Yeah,
want
but
to?
thank you for giving that overview.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
because it's
it's very important. If
It's very
I
important.
think I'm still getting my feedback. Yeah, it's very important for people to understand that Sanatan is not a religion per se. It's a way of life. It's a way of life that teaches love, non-violence, coexistence, which are the values so very much needed in this day and age. It's uh, it's something which the entire humanity would appreciate. So over to you. Please go ahead and you can present the slides.
Yes, and to answer it in one sentence, Kailas is the first nation for Hindus. It is a continuation of the historical and unbroken lineage of ancient Hindu sovereign states and ecclesiastical entities. And the United Nations and international law upholds Kailas's privileges. I'm just getting into some of the international premise and foundations for a Hindu nation, for an indigenous nation. It is not something. It is something that is substantiated by uh, legal precedents and international law, and even the Charter of the United Nations, under customary recognition by the United Nations. It upholds Kailasa's privileges when recognizing Kailasa's inherited unbroken historical sovereign status as per the preamble of both UN Vienna Conventions on Diplomatic Relations and UN Vienna Convention on Consular Relations that declares historical rules of customary international law continue to govern relationships and confirms that all nations from ancient times have recognized sovereign diplomatic rights irrespective of differing constitutional and social systems. This is from the UN Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations preamble. So, Kailasa is a sovereign subject of international law possessing distinctive attributes of juridical statehood derived from the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's inheritance of unbroken succession and the revival of 19 ancient Hindu sovereign states in ecclesiastical historical institutions. So what this is essentially saying is that these Hindu kingdoms, which now many of 19 of them, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is the sovereign, is the inheritor, they existed in ancient times, and for whatever persecutions, attacks that happened, wrongs that were done, they were their lands were taken away, they were legally annexed. Many things have happened, but their sovereignty continues. Their rights as a sovereign state, the juridical status still continues. And just some of the kingdoms worth mentioning are the Surya Vamsa, Surangi, Samrajyam, Sarvanyapitam, the Swarna Pitam, Swargapura Samrajya Sarvanyapitam, the Shamala Pitam, Sarvanyapitam, and Kanchi Kailasa, and other 17 sovereign Hindu ecclesiastical historical institutions. And this has been further acknowledged in a recent report where the juridical status of Kailasa was featured in this report. The UN acknowledges Kailasa's sovereign status under international law derived from SH's inheritance and sovereign Hindu ecclesiastical states, and the principles of continuity of states, which are upheld by the United Nations. So this doctrine of continuity is important, that despite the upheavals, the destructions that happen, changes in government, the loss of territory, they don't negate the existence of a country, they don't affect its legal personality, and they don't affect its international rights and obligations. So this is important, and this is something Hindus should understand, that this Hindu state exists, it's there for them, and it is their right. And after all of the centuries of persecution, Swamiji is literally that last lamp of Hinduism that's literally, despite all of the persecution, ensuring that Hinduism is alive in a form where it can be productive and can be there for generations to come, which is why the state of the United States of Kailasa. So the next few slides go into some of the historical examples where the doctrine of continuity was also applied, Albania, Australia, Portugal, and this is during the World Wars. Yes, we can continue. So the Surya, yes. So basically, all of these international doctrines support the inherent sovereignty of Kailasa. And one of the international, you can say, frameworks for defining a nation is the Montevideo Convention, where it basically says, you can go back to the previous slide, basically defines the 4 elements of defining a state. You must have a territory, you must have a government, you must be able to enter into contracts with other states, and you must have a permanent population. So all of these 4 requirements Kailasa has. So even by all these international definitions, even the UN's own definitions, Kailasa is a sovereign state and has juridical statehood. And as an indigenous nation, there are many, what Hindus have gone through, when some of the efforts Kailas is doing is establishing relations with other indigenous nations, whether it's in, South America, Canada, US, Australia. There's many indigenous nations that were also having their own civilization, but were destroyed through colonialism and various attacks. So there have been precedences in laws that say they also deserve their rights, deserve their lands, etc. And so there's various United Nations charters and international rules that support indigenous rights, which thus supports Kailasa as an indigenous nation. Yes. So this is just a little bit of, the previous slide I wanted just to mention, one of the Montevideo Conventions is the territory, right? So you have to have a territory. Kailasa is not making any sort of claims to the territory that was taken many, many years ago, but just like many countries around the world, whether it's the US, where 25 states were purchased by from other governments, or Canada, or 1/3 of the country was purchased by different sales. There's many such examples where sovereign land was a commodity. So this is the same applies today, where sovereign land is actually bought and sold, which is important when you're trying to understand the international precedences. And the next few slides give some examples of that. And just as is interesting in international law, there's also the divine rights. You can go to the previous slide. Sorry. Deity actually has rights in divine sovereignty. So just as the case of Hindu temples, the deity is the owner of the temple and attached properties. Likewise, in the case of our Hindu kingdoms, the presiding deity of the kingdom is the sovereign of the kingdom. Paramashivam, the primordial Hindu divinity, also worshipped as Paramdama, as per traditions and customs of the kingdoms, is the sovereign of the Hindu nation. So what this means is there's a lot of support and legal evidences and precedences that support the standing of the United States of Kailasa. So perhaps we can go back to, I think we were just finishing the US part in this whole, the US legal cases, which I think there's one facet to this I think we want to showcase. See, one was that the allegations were made in the US and we were victorious, and the Supreme Pontiff Hinduism was completely exonerated. Literally, there's over $6 million in judgments against the perpetrators for the defamation, false allegations. Another aspect is through the US court systems, through the legal system, we were able to obtain evidences that prove Arti Rao, Vinay Bharadwaj are completely lying. These evidence are pristine evidences, including the medical records of Arti Rao. Basically, the U.S. court, based on an application by a U.S. lawyer representing the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, basically saying, look, someone's life is at stake based on these allegations, and we have reason to believe her medical history will show that she's lying, which is very a common request in criminal cases to see the medical reports and histories of a claimant or either side. So the Michigan court ordered this medical records of Arti Rao, who was treated at the University of Michigan for the 4 STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, which she had even before she came to Swamiji for healing. She came because of those STDs. And the University of Michigan, the University of Michigan actually released these records, and these records have quite a bit of detail in them, which expose date discrepancies. They expose how contagious Arti Rao actually was. And why that's important, actually, are we able to show the slides? I think that will help in. Yes, why it's important is the fact that she has STD, actually no one cares about, but because of her claims, she's saying that so many instances in this city, that city, this happened to me, etc., etc. This is her allegations. And to say, basically, it's medically impossible for what she's saying and her own STDs. It's anyone who was in contact with her, to the way she's describing, would be having the same STDs. It's just something that's like completely practical and logical. And this is not something that we just concluded, but it is something that almost 9 independent doctors each looked at the medical tests of Miss Arti Rao, and they actually also looked at the medical tests of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, and they gave a very strong affidavit saying that the allegations are completely false and it is impossible for this to happen. So I'm just going to see if I can scroll through the slides. If you can go a few slides before the start of the medical evidence. Yes, this is fine, yeah. So actually a little bit further before. Yes. So the medical proof of the lawfare. So basically, 9 medical reports of reputed Indian and international hospitals reveal that Arti Rao has been suffering from herpes grade 4, one of the most contagious and incurable sexually transmitted diseases as medically documented. And any person who have sexual interaction or even skin-to-skin contact with her will also be affected by such contagious and incurable disease. So the medical report prepared during October 14th, based on the investigation conducted by the Victoria Hospital, they had conducted on the basis of directions issued by the Supreme Court of India reveals that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has not been affected by any sexually transmitted disease and is impotent, not capable of any sexual act itself. So this reveals that the charges of rape are false. Now, it's important to get into a little bit of the science of this, because if you just look at this chart, a normal adult male's testosterone is the red bar. It's at 1200. A newborn male is at 400. I think it's nanograms. A female is at 80. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was at 12, which means it is, first of all, this is scientifically, this is something very new for the doctors. They had not seen such kind of test results before, but it's undeniable that there is absolutely no capability, drive at a psychological or physical level to even contemplate committing these acts. And the test results show this is like what they call an anorchid, such a level of where if you don't even have the organs, this would be the kind of level of testosterone that one would have. And this is what the medical tests on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism showed.
This is indeed a huge revelation. Do you have any more slides to show?
Yes, I just wanted to mention, see, one of the tools in this whole attack was whether it's through the judiciary and even the tests done on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was completely illegal. And despite the results showing that he was like it says, no clinical signs to suggest that the person was involved in unnatural sexual acts, even though it showed that he is physically impotent. Despite that, the doctors came to an kind of inconclusive conclusion to leave doubt that, oh, maybe it's possible. So despite what actually the results that were published and which were made available, the conclusion was something else. So 9 independent doctors went through the same test results by the Victoria Hospital, and they compared it to the tests, the medical reports from Aarti Rao. They looked at the whole thing, and they said this is completely impossible that the Victoria Hospital will come to this conclusion with these kinds of test results. It's impossible. There's all the causes of impotence are there, and there's no evidence that suggests that that person is So basically, they had concluded that there's no evidence to suggest that the person is incapable of performing the sexual act. This is the conclusion by the Victoria Hospital. So you can see how cunningly they even word their conclusion. And this is what the U.S. doctors, the Indian doctors, the Canadian doctors said is impossible conclusion that you can come to when the test results show that Swamiji, the Supreme of Hinduism, is completely his medical physiology and psychology show that he's incapable of performing any of the acts or allegations made against him. So if we can scroll to the next slides, they're very strong, unequivocal statements made by these very reputable doctors from the US, Dr. Di Loreto. Impossible that Sri Nithyananda Swami committed, I'll just maybe read from a few of these because I think they really tell from an expert's view. Swami does not have the highly contagious disease. The incidents of rape, sexual abuse are false. Swami's records indicate he is not capable of sexual intercourse, and alleged incidents of rape, sexual abuse are false. Swami's medical records show that he has extremely low hormone levels required for a sex drive, which is called the libido, and is a further indication that the alleged incidents of rape, sexual abuse are false. And this is a smoking gun where the doctors in the US found that the conclusions of the committee of the doctors to be strangely uncorrelated with the unique test results of the patient. And the medical condition that they can attribute to this is anorchid testosterone. We can continue. This is kind of all, they end up coming to the same conclusion and repeating the same findings because it is what it is. And here, Dr. Bogle says his all three causes of erectile dysfunction, vasculogenic, hormonal, and psychological, which provide enough clear evidence to support Sri Nithyananda Swami's claim that he is incapable of sexual acts and thus did not perform rape and unnatural sex. So when you look at all of this, this is such compelling evidence. It gave a lot of hope, that the truth is revealed now. See, like, this is evidence that these claims are completely false and concocted, despite the efforts by these anti-Hindu elements. These evidences were produced in the U.S. So it was simply, at the time, we felt it was simply a matter of these evidences being presented in the Indian courts, and this whole thing would go away. And even the Supreme Court had ordered, maybe we can go to the next slides, had actually ordered the lower court to produce these and ensure that the prosecution produced these sterling evidences, including her email, Aarti Rao's email, where she unequivocally says in 2009 she has never, nothing has ever, she's never been a victim of any kind of rape or any sexual abuse. This is on record, and these medical findings and evidences are on record, but they have not come to fruition in the Indian court. Now, maybe hand it over to Achal Swamy to kind of get into how important this part is with respect to the case.
Well, like it was said, the justice was already meted out and proven in the U.S. courts almost more than a decade back. But the trial in the false case against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, as far as India goes, is practically yet to begin. Actually, it has not even started. And like how the conspirators have been avoiding appearing in the US courts, similarly in India, as we just saw, the conspirators are absconding when they are supposed to be leading the evidence and giving the evidence so that the case can continue. They are not even available. They've gone on appeals all the way to the Supreme Court asking for waiver, etc. And the court said it doesn't even make sense. You've given a complaint, you give your statement, you give the evidence so that the trial and the case can continue. So that's the current state of the lawfare in India, where when it's already proven beyond doubt by competent courts in the US, the Indian court has still not started its journey of justice.
Thank you so much for giving this entire story, which was never told by the media. And I am so glad, I'm so happy that you came to our studio, Bharat FM studio, and you gave each and every evidence which was actually in favor of Swamiji, but it was manipulated, it was hidden. So all I have to say that, dear viewers, we went through each and every allegation and conspiracy against Swami Nithyananda, and we realized that the falsity and baselessness of all these cases. For almost 14, 15 years, he was the victim of false and illegal cases against him, lacking any substance or evidence, but it continued for political and financial interests. So finally, in due time, over the course of these years, courts in USA have already completely thrown out the false claims against him, and they have issued $400,000 plus judgments against the false accusers for deliberately conspiring to slander and extort Swamiji. So we can conclude from this that truth shall and will always prevail. Swamiji is here to spread enlightenment and raise the consciousness of planet Earth, which is very much needed during this time. Let us wish him all the best and do our part in supporting the truth. And thank you so much once again for being with us. Have a wonderful day. Thank you once again, Ma Dhyanatma and Ma Achalaji. Thank you.